With the premiere of Star Wars Rise of the Resistance, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, and soon enough Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, it appears Disney is really embracing trackless dark ride technology. I will, however, be upfront in saying that I believe the technology is actually being quite underutilized. We're going to be taking a look at other attractions both within and outside the Walt Disney Company to see how they can better innovate. If you're watching this, you likely already know what I mean when I'm talking about trackless dark rides, but if not, let me quickly explain. A dark ride is an attraction that takes you through a series of scenes, conveying an overall story or narrative. Trackless ride vehicles are just that, vehicles that operate without a physical track. The idea behind trackless ride technology is that the lack of track makes the experience more unpredictable and in some cases more immersive. There's also a novelty to seeing ride vehicles move without a physical track to guide them. Disney first implemented trackless vehicles with the opening of the Universe of Energy with Epcot in 1982. The ride vehicles here were known as Automated Guided Vehicles, or AGVs for short. As with contemporary trackless vehicles, they were controlled by computers, but were guided by a wire in the ground, hence the guided part of AGV. You sit down in what is presumed to be a theater, only to have your seating start moving towards animatronic dinosaurs. The ride vehicles were quite slow and didn't do much other than follow a linear path, but for the time it was quite unexpected and innovative. The technology was again used in 1989 when the Great Movie Ride opened with Disney's MGM Studios, and as far as I'm aware, nothing really changed about the technology and its implementation there. However, AGVs would take a big step forward with the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror in 1994. As with the previous two iterations of the AGVs, the Tower of Terror still used a wire-guided system, but was moving in and out of elevator shafts. Obviously, this is a far more complex system, as you're taking one ride vehicle and locking it into two other separate ride systems. If you want to find out more about how this works, I strongly recommend a video titled How Disney's Tower of Terror Works, published by Art of Engineering on YouTube. If you're interested, I will provide a link to this video down in the description below. While these early versions of trackless vehicles were innovative for their time, the opening of Pooh's Honey Hunt at Tokyo Disneyland in 2000 used a different guidance system completely. Smaller, quicker, and more versatile ride vehicles were guided by the Local Positioning System, or LPS. These ride vehicles are still technically AGVs, but are more commonly referred to as trackless ride vehicles. In my research, I've concluded that these terms are used interchangeably because there doesn't seem to be an industry standard differentiating between wire and LPS guided systems. However, I do tend to view LPS guided vehicles as different in that their increased mobility rates create a different kind of ride experience from its slower predecessors. From this point forward though, I will simply still refer to them as trackless vehicles. When Star Wars Rise of the Resistance premiered in December of 2019, it was often credited as being one of the most technologically advanced attractions ever created. I certainly do like the attraction, but contrary to popular opinion, I feel its use of the trackless ride system isn't particularly impressive or innovative. In fact, I think there's a lot of lost potential. Let's go back to Pooh's Honey Hunt and analyze how the technology is being used there. The attraction starts by having the vehicles flow from scene to scene down a river in a seemingly random manner. Of course, every vehicle's position is precisely controlled, but it's the appearance of randomization that changes the experience from something with a track, like the many adventures in Winnie the Pooh found in the Magic Kingdom. Trackless movement feels more organic and, for the time, was an impressive novelty. Compare this to Rise of the Resistance and its tight corridors with very linear movement. Even in its more open spaces, you don't get the sense of unpredictability that you feel in the first segment in Honey Hunt. Riders enter into Pooh's dream sequence, where the ride vehicles move around to different scenes in one large room, while also dancing in sync with other ride vehicles. Again, this creates a sense of randomization and subsequently a degree of unpredictability, creating a unique rider experience. What this scene also does really well is utilize the attraction's space to the maximum. Because the ride vehicles are not limited to a physical rail, they have the capability to backtrack, move up to set pieces, and circle or spin in one large area to really maximize the footprint of the show building. This scene plays out in just this room for around 1 minute and 15 seconds, which doesn't sound like much, but is actually quite a long time compared to most other tracked attractions, even if they have scenes where the ride vehicle stops. Another good example of utilizing limited space is in Antarctica Empire of the Penguin at SeaWorld Orlando. By no means does this attraction come to the level of anything Disney is producing, but one thing it does do really well is programming its ride vehicles to circle rooms and use the motion to tell its story within a limited space. Take these first two scenes, which take around 1 minute and 10 seconds to play out. The ride vehicles move and sway with the projected penguin puck, indicating that you are the character and seeing your own reflection in the ice. Not only is this a clever way to use vehicle movement to convey what's happening, but the movement in the limited footprint again maximizes what you can communicate in only one room. Sadly, the rest of the attraction is disappointingly mediocre, but this also speaks volumes about Disney's wasted potential with the technology. The Rise of the Resistance ride vehicles separate at times, or encounter returning ride vehicles, but they still follow a very linear path. The same thing happens in Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. There are many open rooms where a scene could potentially play out for an extended period of time and have the ride vehicles interact with each other, but the ride is more concerned with maintaining a linear path at a breakneck pace, not even really allowing you to take in what's happening. The biggest waste of potential is the tornado scene, where the size of the room almost makes it seem as if you were supposed to spin around the tornado itself, and this movement was somehow cut. That being said, Runaway Railway does at least include the dancing scene in Daisy's dance studio, but the synchronized dancing of the vehicles doesn't seem to add to the narrative in any way. In Pooh's Honey Hunt, the dream sequence brings you to different mini scenes, and the dancing cars help to sell the dreamlike state. Daisy's dance studio, however, feels strangely out of place. As far as I can tell, it's irrelevant to the goal of catching up to Mickey and Minnie, and brings the pacing of the ride to a screeching halt. It feels like a tech demo of what the ride vehicles can do, but doesn't actually enhance the overall narrative in the way that Honey Hunt or Empire of the Penguin do. I will give credit where credit is due though. LPS is used in some creative ways in these attractions, like when Kylo Ren uses the Force to move the ride vehicles, or when the train breaks apart, but ultimately, I feel the technology is still criminally underutilized. This is made all the more apparent by the opening of The Enchanted Tale of Beauty and the Beast at Tokyo Disneyland. This attraction takes the dream sequence from Honey Hunt and bases almost all of its scenes around the same idea of maximizing single rooms to tell the story through vehicle motion, backtracking, and an environment that keeps revealing more to advance the narrative. This ride in particular will act out entire musical scenes from the film, and the Be Our Guest sequence serves as an excellent example. When riders first enter the dining room, they see Belle at the table and Lumiere introduces the song. As he begins to sing, the ride vehicles turn back to the table and various servants-turned objects are seen dancing on the table to Belle's delight. The song continues, the ride vehicles dance, and then turn around to show a sequence where plates begin to dance off of their hutches as the music picks up in tempo. The vehicles continue maneuvering and turn around once again to see the table fully stocked with dancing characters, and the room illuminated with exciting lighting as the song reaches its finale. This scene showcases just how versatile the trackless vehicle technology can be through the scene's masterful execution of the Be Our Guest number. They direct riders towards various scenes within one room, while also making them feel like an organic part of the scene itself. The scene, and here's the word again, maximizes the space it is in to tell the story, as opposed to moving you on a linear path. So, what about Remy's Ratatouille adventure? Well, as far as I'm aware, the attraction that's set to open at Epcot is an almost exact copy of the French version in Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris. I haven't experienced this attraction, but it appears to take a different approach to what we've seen with the trackless ride vehicles. The ride vehicles themselves appear to also move in a mostly linear fashion, but they do apparently simulate movement and vibrate in the same way that the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man vehicles do at Islands of Adventure. The Spider-Man vehicles are not trackless, but Ratatouille also seems to take from this concept of simulated movement with its vehicles, and so it's hard to criticize when it's doing something completely different from Rise and Runaway Railway. I think that upon opening, I will give the attraction higher marks because I think it's already more unique than what Disney has already opened in the United States. From here, let me talk about some other miscellaneous criticisms I have of Rise of the Resistance and Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. First, people love to talk about how technically advanced Rise of the Resistance is, but I'm unimpressed even beyond its unimaginative trackless ride path. The vehicles going up on elevators has already been done on the Tower of Terror, as we already discussed, and the escape pod drop sequence at the end of the ride is really just more of the same, but with a motion base. I'm absolutely sure that it's technically complicated, but I'm still not really that impressed with it. Second, let's talk about trackless floor design. The blue floor for the river section of Pooh's Honey Hunt is a good example of theming, whereas it appears that Runaway Railway couldn't be bothered to do anything other than gray in some of its scenes. There are some different prints on the floor during the course of the ride, like the railroad tracks in the tunnel, or the flooring in Daisy's dance studio, but a lot of the scenes, like the western for example, could have at least used some themed color or texture on the floor. In addition, railway set pieces, for being touted as 2.5D, also seem oddly flat and one-dimensional, which brings me to my third point. Rise, and especially Runaway Railway, rely far too heavily on projection technology. Projection mapping is great for enhancing already substantial sets, but in the case of Runaway Railway, it seems like a crutch for a lack of sets, and again, everything feels oddly flat, like you're in a testing warehouse with a tech demo being performed. In the case of Rise, the projection mapping works great to simulate blaster fire and ship damage, but there are too many other projections where animatronics could have been used, like in the various scenes where you're discovered by stormtroopers. It's not really that these scenes look bad, but I seem to remember Rise being compared to Pirates of the Caribbean for its large number of animatronics. Quality over quantity though, as you can see that even the low-level animatronics in Pirates have more movement than these 50 stormtroopers that occasionally move their heads side to side. Slightly. Before we go, there is one last attraction that we haven't talked about, and as I'm sure many people have guessed, it's Mystic Manor at Hong Kong Disneyland. The reason I haven't said anything about it is because while yes, its use of the trackless dark ride vehicles is pretty linear, it more than makes up for it with this incredibly interesting and varied sets, animatronics, and of course, uses projection tech to a far more effective degree. To conclude, I certainly don't dislike Star Wars Rise of the Resistance or Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, but I do strongly feel that they lack in certain areas, especially with the other examples we've seen of the creative uses of the trackless dark ride technology. If you enjoy my content and would like to see more, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to receive notifications on when my videos come out. Giving a thumbs up on the video would also be helpful in allowing more people to see it. Also be sure to give me your thoughts on the trackless dark ride vehicles and how they are utilized. Do you agree with my points, or do you think that Disney is going in the right direction?